2, 3, recording. Very good. Hello, good morning, good evening, depending where you are. This is SIG API Machinery, bi-weekly meeting for Kubernetes open source. My name is Federico Bongiovanni. I'm co-chair of SIG API Machinery. Luckily, in the call, we have David Eads, my co-chair and tech lead of the SIG, and Daniel, also another tech lead of the SIG. And we are going to cover a number of interesting topics today. So why don't we get started? Proactively Mo added the first topic, so I will give the privilege to him to start covering that one. So all with you.
Yeah, do you mind opening some of the links? So I can give some context. So for the KMS v2 KEP, we want to have the capability of being able to have automatic storage migration of data as the underlying keys change. That problem set is very similar, or in a sense exactly the same as what the storage version API tries to solve for encoder version, so like schemas of objects. And I suspect it's probably the only way to solve it in Kubernetes based on what I've started to think about and gone through all the bits. But so the API server identity KEP and the storage version KEP are pretty tightly linked and have not been updated in orders of 2 to 3 years, depending on how you want to count. So what I wanted to kind of get a sense, there's like 2 high-level questions I had. One is on these KEPs. Were you guys happy with sort of the APIs that you came up with in the code and sort of the approach? Or was there like something like more dramatic that needs to be actually changed about the actual implementation that exists within Kubernetes API today? Or is it just like, hey, add some tests and like make sure it actually does what it does kind of deal? That's like my first thought around that. And the other thought is there's lower in the KMS v2 KEP, there's a small diff around a proposed change to the storage version API to add some extra fields. I wanted to kind of get a sense for what folks thought about that and if that would be kind of okay.
So one thing I can definitely say is the API server identity and storage version KEPs have kind of stalled out due to the contributors going off and doing other things. So I think it's not that we don't want them, we just don't have somebody to drive them at the moment. I think the API server identity KEP is actually pretty important and is blocking a lot of things. And there's a bunch of people working around it. So I think that's important.
I'm trying to remember where we left the storage version. I don't remember it hitting a blocker implementation wise. I don't remember what happened to the PRs for it. Looks like I think I found a PR from a while back that didn't merge that I had review comments on. I'm trying to look to see if past me said this can't be fixed.
Yeah, is that from Howie?
It is.
Yeah, he switched teams. Has been working on some other things. So yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
Yeah, it looks like my comment says that there was a simplification that I wanted before it merged, but that there wasn't any reason it couldn't work. So let's see, past me said we simplify with a flow where we create storage, allow read-only requests, mutating after we figure out the storage version. So
looking at this title of this PR, it looks like maybe the storage version stuff isn't wired up for custom resources today, or it doesn't work maybe for custom resources.
Yeah, if I'm remembering correctly, the problem was a race on startup to be sure that you knew what version you had and it was accurate before you started storing data, right? So part of this, if someone is relying on this for something like storage version migration, they have to know that the value that is present is actually being used and you haven't used something else to store instead. And that's what I believe this PR was doing.
Okay, that makes sense. Is it safe to assume that like the aggregator and aggregated API servers are already correct because the kube API server code is correct?
I don't remember the
Do people
advantage
who
that
write
they-
do people who write aggregated API servers ever update the code that they are importing?
Yeah, usually every release. Well, sorry, I guess it depends on who owns that particular one.
Yeah, so if it's David or me, then yes, we do.
Okay.
Every release.
Every release.
I suspect that not everybody does is quite that on top of it.
You can't save everyone. So
I agree with David on this one.
So it's easier for those because their storage versions are pinned in the code. I don't remember I don't remember the state, but I do know that it's an easier problem because they're pinned in the code as opposed to mutable in an API definition.
Right. That makes sense. We're on the API server identity stuff. Were you guys happy with just like reusing lease objects and just giving them a label to identify them as belonging to API servers? Was that sort of kind of?
I thought that we had at least that much merged in the code already.
No. What I was asking was, is that approach that exists in the code, as you just said, Daniel, is that sufficient? Like, you don't want some other completely distinctly different API to represent API server identities?
As this was what the SIG topic was about. I don't recall exactly. I think that whatever we merged was on the way to the thing that we wanted, but I can't promise that without doing some homework.
It has been a while, but my memory, and you probably looked at it more recently than I have, is that we actually did say reuse the existing leases. We put them in I don't think we put them in default. We put them in some namespace where people was supposed to be our namespace.
Cube system.
That sounds like a thing I would have suggested. And then probably tried to copy the kubelet heartbeat code.
So it reuses the same lease controller. It just has a extra closure passed in that mutates the lease to have the label.
Okay.
There's like a custom garbage collecting controller that's running in the API server for cleaning up those leases.
I don't remember being unhappy with that.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I don't know if that's like, so like that sounds like the way that API server would figure out who all the API servers are. It's not necessarily the way we would want to present that to users of API server. I can't promise that without looking at how easy that is to consume. And if there's like other likely API servers need to communicate to each other what version they are, what their feature flags are, etc. And I don't think that is going to be captured in the lease thing. I think the lease thing is just to get the identities of who is in the system.
Right, for use elsewhere.
Yes. Right, and so storage version does use that same identity. And I think that all seems conceptually right and seems fine. Tim, I see you had your hand up. Did you want to go?
I was basically just going to echo the same thing, that like having that, this has come up in the context of storage version migrator, that having the API server versions would be important to that. So I don't know if that's, a separate object or how that would end up looking, but.
Yeah, so storage version is its own API. And so like that, I think sort of leads me into my other question. Fede, could you bring up the KMS v2 KEP and kind of scroll down until you see a git diff?
Which one?
The first one, that one right there, and just kind of scroll down.
This one? Yeah.
Yes.
You tell me.
Right there. So this is sort of like, ignore the exact specifics, but this is the rough proposal I had of like, hey, I'm just going to add fields to the storage version API that tell you, like each API server would say, hey, this is my encryption state. And then just as we have a common encoding version, we could have a common encryption state. Is that sort of like agreeable to y'all? Is that fair, or like would y'all want me to go build like a completely separate API that's reusing the same information per group resource?
This looks related to me. I mean,
I think it's relevant. I guess my complaint with this stuff was always like the implementation and how limiting it was from scalability perspective. Not with the API type things.
Okay. Is there?
I'm not. It seems reasonable to do something. I'm not sure. Like if we're adding something to this, we need to be kind of clear about what it is and how, like the literal key ID, is that really something that we should share? Is a hash of the, or HMAC of the keys something better to share? I think I would rather have it be more opaque than less opaque, if possible. And like obviously it's optional and clients need to be able to survive without it being there. I think I'm more worried about who's setting it and how than modifying the API version.
Yeah, so that reminds me of another question I had. So like right now, this object is managed inside the API servers with the storage version manager struct, which has some really specific logic about like the ordering of this stuff and like deduping like cohabitating resources and just a bunch of really gnarly stuff about resource semantics. Would it be okay to just enhance that to like take some, I don't know, something that helps it understand the encryption related fields, hashes or whatever? Or would you want me to like copy a bunch of code and make a different control?
I think it would depend on where we know these keys. So I think that's a code level decision in my mind, Mo. I see this API as representing, these are the things that the API server knows about the data that it is storing on a per resource basis. And
yeah, so like if it's a external process that knows what the keys are, I would expect that to send its own like patch or server-side apply request to modify these. And the API server change would be like permitting an external owner of this field. And if it is known in process, then
it's only known in process to the API server.
It's completely known in process to the API server, even for CRDs.
Yes.
Okay, then wiring it along with the other, like I'd expect it to get wired along with the other things that we wire from like, what part of the code knows it? Is it the etcd storage layer, or is it the command line resource enablement stuff?
Yeah, so it's the etcd storage layer. And it isn't funneled out yet because there's no user of it outside of that layer. But it's meant to be dynamic because the plugin, the KMS plugin, is allowed to change it at any time. So it's already sort of fully set up to be dynamic. So it would probably end up looking like some interface function or something that tells you the current information.
So if it changes, how does API server know, like what part of API? Because I think this stuff basically doesn't change except for the CRD things. And I don't think API server does anything other than like make sure the object is there. But if you've got some part of it that can change on some basis, then we have to add a mechanism that can like propagate that change. If we're adding a mechanism that propagates that change, it's not obvious to me if we should like make the current code also propagate changes, or if it maybe it's just easier to have a loop inside like the etcd storage layer, which then sends a patch request or whatever when something changes. We're expecting API server to like pull this thing, or is it watchable, or like how are we supposed to know when it changes?
Yeah, so the API server learns this information from basically every time there's a write, it has a chance of updating its cache during that write process. So it's kind of like that. So it is pulled because there's no watch on it, or because it's, I mean, I guess we could have built a watch for the status API for KMS, but it's just a pulled API. So it would be like today, the storage version stuff just tries to update every 10 minutes because it's like, it's kind of slow moving. You shouldn't be messing with this. But if you kind of messed it up, we'd fix it up every 10 minutes for you, kind of deal. This would kind of make it a little bit more dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got stuff, yeah, if the storage layer knows it, I think the storage layer doesn't have the, I don't know, it's a little weird to have the storage layer calling back through the front door of API server to modify something in another storage layer.
So we did have to address that with a filter handler, but like weird is relative. The alternative, which some of us have lived through, is worse. Alternative being direct modification etcd of another resource that doesn't go through.
Oh yeah, that's unacceptable.
Yeah,
I wasn't suggesting that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't find that to be overly strange. I think finding a consistent spot to write it is important. Being able to describe when you dock the field how much lag can be expected, and everything in this type is a reflection of what the server actually does. It doesn't actually drive the server behavior. So
right.
I think that's in keeping with the field you're proposing, right?
Yes, it is a reflection, and if someone messed with it, then you made a wrong reflection and it'll get fixed. But like, doesn't, like, we're not trying to consume this information in the API server. We're trying to tell other things that, hey, barring someone just arbitrarily messing with like core system resources, you can trust the data in here to be something useful for your purposes. For a next step, so I can certainly try to resurrect that CRD or CRPR and make it storage version stuff work there. One of the next steps that I thought might be appropriate is like the KEP document seems to be not in line with what's actually in the API server code, because those things diverge. So I was going to try to update it, and that would hopefully give you all a way of like being like, yeah, that seems like a good idea versus not. But the kind of the high level I'm getting is there's not necessarily anything like invalid about any of these KEPs, and like if I was to like make sure they had good test coverage and stuff, and otherwise actually were feature complete for what they said they would be, that this could go to beta in like 127.
I think we had beta criteria for the storage version 1. Did we have it for the identity one?
I don't recall, but so the only promise I can make is that if you chat PRs at me that adjust the KEPs, I will review them.
Okay. Yeah, I don't need like a promise on, hey, yeah, this will make it at this time. It's more of if there's some obvious gotchas and blockers and things that, you know, are hard going to prevent it from graduating further.
Yeah,
Hey,
I don't think
I
there
don't
was any
know.
like blockers or like technical like surprises that we knew about, and that's what stopped us, is just like the people doing it ran out of time to do it and did something else.
Yeah, that, you know, that sounds fine. I can find bodies. That part is not hard.
Okay.
Yeah, it's at a high level. My concern is I'm taking a sig-auth KEP and then deeply coupling it into two separate SIG API machinery KEPs and hoping that the other two graduate so I can graduate my thing.
I think you should just look at it as Daniel and I were prescient, knew what you needed 8 releases ago, and we will accept the thank you. It works better if you can see my face. So should we go ahead and add this into the KEP list for you for API Machinery 126? I need to double check to make sure that it actually is. We did indicate this is what we wanted for beta, but if we've done that, then I think I'm happy doing that.
Yeah, if you think that there isn't that much left for it to go to beta, I can certainly push my efforts towards getting this moved forward, because I'm not moving KMS forward this release on purpose. So like I have time. But yeah, I know what I need to do for KMS. I don't necessarily know exactly.
Yeah, I'm just the average case for a KEP is that something surprises us. So I think the sooner we can start on it, the better.
Okay. I'll try to find the features. I don't even know if they have issues. There's a bunch of labels we have to add, and I think we have to do that before tomorrow. So,
yay.
Yeah.
Okay. I have taken up like 10 more minutes than I planned on, and I know you guys have a packed agenda, so I will stop talking. Thank you, guys.
Cool. Thanks, Mo. I think the next 2 items are on the agenda for me, and I'm going to try to keep each of them super short. These are just follow-ups from last time. The current state of the logical clock versus expanding the definition of resource version is that I made this issue, and a number of people expressed opinions. It seems to me that there were even some additional pros were pointed out for the second option of the adding a logical clock, but it still seems to me that overall expanding resource version is winning. If you haven't read it, I would read at least the first post. I've tried to keep it up to date with all of the arguments that have been brought to light in the comments. But if the discussion doesn't evolve soon, I'll probably just call it for option 1, expanding resource version, and send a documentation PR, and we can be done with this. Okay. And the second one, and if you don't agree with that, then also go say something there. The second one is the sub-resources fine-grained permissions. In addition to the 5 straw designs you all saw, I took that to sig-auth last week, and I think mostly the objection from Jordan that the first set of designs only solve the like grant additional permission to somebody who doesn't have it problem, and not the like restrict permission from somebody who does have it problem. And so we're up to I think 9 designs. Design 6 is basically something David was saying. Design 7 is my expansion of that, and Tim didn't like that, so he wrote a design 8, and I thought that was insufficiently clear, so I've written a design 9, and I still think it's not right. I think design 9 at least illustrates the problem with like parameterizing permissions and making them like in some sort of nested manner, making them restrictable. But that's the current state, and I think Tim is like leaving comments on it as we speak here. So I'll try not to watch the screen. Yeah, I don't have a design that we could possibly make in time for the KEP deadline. So this is going to have to wait until next release to get a design. Yeah, so
I
that's
have
the state.
not been able to carve out time to review the designs. I've been buried in KEP land since the sig-auth meeting.
I don't
there
think
will be
there's
time.
anything...
Like I get time in the next 2 weeks to do it before we come back. Or you aren't trying to write a KEP now, right?
I'm not going to write a KEP. I might be. So I think design 9 might be close enough to passing everybody's criteria that maybe a KEP format to finish off the design is the next step, but I'm not going to get that out in the next couple weeks probably.
Okay.
Maybe in the next couple weeks, but certainly
but not in the next couple hours.
Yeah, no.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, that's all I wanted to, I just wanted everybody to know, since we took like the entire time last time talking about those, I thought people wanted to know where they ended up.
Thank you, Daniel, for the updates. This is great. I mean, to have follow-ups on things that we discussed largely and then we lost track. Okay, so David, Daniel, do we want to do this? So as you know, the process in 126 has changed. We have to opt in the KEPs that we think are going to make it or that we want to make it into the next release. So this is the general board, and then there is, okay, it's one of my screen, it's just zoomed. You can filter here through our KEP, filter by values, SIG API Machinery here. So we have 3 KEPs that I already linked in the document so far. Maybe we will get most one into this too. So where are we here? Okay. So how do we do this? Let's go one by one. I don't know who wants to talk about them. First one is to allow informers for getting a stream of data instead of chunking. Polynomial. David, I believe was you who finally accepted into the.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
This is one we worked through with Wojtek and got to the point where we even had an implementation last time, but we weren't implementable, so we didn't merge.
Good. Any questions on this one? Anybody has comments, concerns? No. Good. Move to the next one.
I probably want to go look at it because I don't remember where we got to on that one. But I won't. If David already approved it, I won't block it.
Okay. The next one is self-admission control.
Yeah, I know David made a pass, Jordan made a pass, I made a pass. I think we've got all of the unresolved items out of this. And there's one last PR that has the review and flips it to implementable. So this is about ready to go.
Yeah, and as I recall, John had the PRR on this. I looked through the unresolved sections at like 155. And I thought that was pretty good. It looks like it reflected the yes, we are going to do this. No, it is not in phase 1.
Yeah.
So I was happy with that for secondary authorization and for namespace metadata.
Yeah, those are definitely both in.
Yeah. So
Great.
What needs to happen in practice? This needs to be merged before tomorrow night?
Yeah, I was gonna, since I got like 3 or 4 of these, I was gonna let David flip the final bit on this, or approve this last one that's on the screen right now.
Sure. I will line that up for this afternoon before I leave.
Awesome. Thank you all. I will try and never write a KEP that long again. That is a personal goal. So thank you all for reading that one. Appreciate it.
I think the official deadline is tomorrow at midnight PST, something like that. I can double check, but better to be safe than to be into
Yeah, I think the changes since you last saw David are probably very small, and it won't take you much time.
Yep, makes sense.
Okay, and the last one we have on the list is Aggregated Discovery. So who
Is
wants to
Antoine
take-
or Jeff here?
I see a Jeffrey.
Jeffrey?
Oh yeah, sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we just have one last sort of question on that, on the PR. Oh, sorry, can you go to the PR?
Where is the PR? Hold on. This one?
Actually, I can link it in the chat.
If this is the PR about like beta versus alpha and feature gate versus serialization, there's actually a long Slack thread about that now. And I think where it landed is the idea of a more stable serialization makes sense because we have a lot of experience with discovery, many years of experience with discovery. But we have controllers and HA concerns for the implementation of the backing data that have not been tested. So a beta serialization would allow us to have clients honor it when it was available, because we know the serialization is stable. It's not going to dramatically change, and as opposed to an alpha, which could significantly change over time, basically complete discard and redo. And so we can gate the beta serialization with an alpha feature gate without changing the timelines proposed here. So the client would be able to use it if the server chose to enable it. And then the decision about whether to enable that will be left up to how confident individual distros are, and potentially you can even change your mind at a later point. So if you're not sure enough to turn it on when 126 comes out, when 127 comes out and it's beta and on by default and there were basically no changes, then you can come in and retroactively turn it on older releases. And I think we managed to get Jordan, Clayton, myself, and Antoine all on board with that.
Yeah, I kind of back out of this one because there's just too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, there are definitely lots of opinions on this.
So what needs to happen to, before tomorrow night?
If I'm remembering well, Jeffrey needs to read and make sure he agrees with the big long Slack thread. And if he does, then I think it's just swapping the feature gate to say alpha, leaving the serialization as beta. And then we are good to merge.
Yeah, I've updated the KEP based on our discussion. So probably just needs a review now.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So we're good.
Just if I could just say a couple words on behalf of the SIG CLI, it would be really useful for kube control to be able to have a significantly more efficient discovery. We strongly support this, and we're hoping that this we don't have to wait another 4 months for the next release. Thanks.
Yeah, that's the goal of that more stable beta serialization. So with a beta serialization, we would be willing to merge into client Go usage of that serialization. And that means that if the server turns it on for you in 126, you can use it. In 127, it'll be on by default. And if somebody retroactively turns it on for you in 126 in their distro by enabling it on alpha, the client Go will automatically use it for you.
Cheers. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, David. Okay. And so we went through these 3, and then there was one more thing I wanted to show, that there are 2 more KEPs that are not in the board, but they are open and tagging SIG API Machinery with the label 126. So I think it's this one and this one. So I understand they are not primarily API Machinery. They may be, on the side involving us.
yeah, I can say something about this one on the screen right now. This feature is not really related to us. They've asked for some things about like sending stuff in a delete request and having that propagated to conditions on the object. And Jordan and I have not been in favor of that. Currently, the issue where they interact with us is that they're sending patches to update conditions before a pod is deleted. When we talked about alpha, I think we got a item that requested them to switch to server-side apply for updating those. And there was more discussion on this, and they wanted to remove that for beta, but in the discussion, it turns out that the code making the patches is not really tolerant of other actors racing to make similar changes and is buggy, like potentially adding a second condition or deleting or replacing the wrong condition. So I think they're keeping the request to switch to server-side apply, or whatever else will fix that. Yeah. So I don't think we really need to pay attention to this.
And to correct what I said, it is in the tracking board. It's just that it's under SIG apps primarily. So yeah, that's why I didn't see it. And maybe the same situation happens with the other one. This one. So this is 3288. So 3288. Okay, yeah, it's also in and it's under stream. So I think very good. If I I don't want to extend this meeting unnecessarily. If I remove the milestone 126, there is a bunch of SIGs that tag API machinery too. But I think this is an exercise for another day. Okay, so I think we are good, unless somebody thinks otherwise. Our KEPs are opt-in, and people owning those KEPs are going to make sure that PRs get merged and the bit gets flipped before tomorrow night. And that's what I have for this. Anything else? Well, thank you. And I hope we can eventually, get some help to keep making progress in this too. We'll keep you posted. Thank you so much for attending today. I hope you have a good Wednesday or the rest of it, and have a good week.
See ya.
Bye.